Going to be the BatF Blenheim, and I'll get to a more historical and rules-based introduction to the whatever is needed to play the game in a moment. But I'm in the midst of setup, and I've had a couple of issues with setup so far. The first one is, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, if you recall, when I was talking about either the rules themselves or early on in Nearwinden, I mentioned that I thought I lost a counter. And because while I was clipping the counters, I dropped something on my leg. It bounced off my leg. I couldn't find it. I spent, a good amount of time at the time looking for it. And I spent a lot of time yesterday as well, kind of searching my bedroom floor. Now, this is, much, much later. But I don't know what happened to it, right? And now I've got a unit less of the Valiere cavalry than I'm supposed to. And they're named units, and I'm missing one. I'm going to just use this blank counter to represent another unit of it with approximately the same values. And I figured that's fair. Now, of course, maybe I'm just wrong, because what I've found is there's some issues with the counters, just as there was with the Nearwinden counters. I'm sorry, it's Monday morning. It looks kind of nice, but it's going to rain today. It's supposed to rain all day, so yeah, not going shopping today. I had a meal of canned yams that I found somewhere or another. But I'm trying to figure out which one it is. In addition to that, there was a unit of Allied forces that had an extra unit in the command, and it's not the normal. I don't remember who it is. I'm going to start recording these as I find them, since I've got the camera out. It was a relatively large unit. That had might have been Tahir Lavelle. 1, 2, 3, 4. That has 5 pieces. That's what it's supposed to have. I don't remember. Holstein Beck has 5. That looks right. Could it be Palante? Or Paland? Yeah, Paland is only supposed to have 4 battalions. And there are actually 5 here. Okay. Now, none of these are dragoons, which kind of confused me in the other battle. Nearwinden. I wanted to call it Windermere. None of these are the same name, I think. I'm looking over them. And, they're listed here as 4. Now, if I go over here, let's find Paland and see what's up there, because maybe this improves on it. I haven't been looking everything up in here. I did look up the one that I'm missing, and yeah, it has an extra unit in both places. So I'm assuming I dropped that piece. I have no idea what happened. It could have. The only thing I can think of is that it stuck to my clothes or something and ended up somewhere really, really stupid. Because anywhere it could have bounced at, I've done a couple of searches for. Looking for Paland here, and I'm sorry for starting the video this way. There's a horrible way to start it, but I need to get some of this information out at least. There's Palm. That's a different unit. Okay, now I'm not finding Paland. Paland is infantry. It's going to be Dutch, so it should be kind of orangish. Oh, there it is. So this says 4 units, and it lists them here. And this is really weird because, let's pull them up. I'll put them back in place. I'm trying to set them up. So what do I have? I have Schwerin, okay, covered. I have Palantverin. It's up here. I'll put them like this. I have Blenheim. That's here. I have Ergons, who is not in there. And I have Wolfern, who's in here. So there's basically a counter that's excess. And, you know, what am I supposed to do about that? I don't know. Yeah, let's see what I got here. I think this is essentially the same situation as I was setting up. Well, now I come down to this Rantzau cavalry, which is interesting. It has a mixture of, it does have some dragoons in it. Most of the dragoons in this game have not had the choice between mounted and foot. I had the choice so far with just this one French unit down here where the same units are named, so you have like two different deployment options. You don't seem to have that here, and that makes sense. This is the only unit, like the whole unit can be either a foot unit or a mounted unit, your choice. And I've chosen to go to mounted. I know that in the other game I was saying, hey, I should have used foot instead of mounted in many cases. You know, where I had a whole unit or something to choose, because I felt like foot units were more advantageous to me. Although, you really, I don't think, want a mixed command unit. Like, you don't want a unit that has both both mounted units and foot units in it. And you were able to do that in that other game, in the Neerwinden scenario. But what's weird with this one, and I haven't looked at Rantzau yet, I'm just getting ready to set it. It has 7 units, which is how many I have here. But if you look at the numbering, 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5. These are the, and one of them is Wert Els. And okay, so these are all Wert Els. And that looks like I'm missing 2 regiments out of that. And then I go over here, and the Shalansk has 2 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5. I think what that's telling me is there's some units that aren't present in the battlefield for both of those brigades, but it's very, very confusing to see that I'm supposed to have 5 units in a command and have a set of pieces that numbers Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4 and 5 are over here, perhaps, is what I thought. I didn't really look at the name. And then there's another Unit 2, and I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know. I don't know why you would possibly, like, break the regiment, the brigade into regiments that, I'm sorry, that you would break the regiment into counters that you kind of generically number and then leave ones out in the middle, right? Like, I can understand where you would want to express that there's parts of this regiment that aren't on the field, but there's no reason to say that numbers 1 and 3, as far as I'm concerned, like, that these specific parts, there wouldn't have been any kind of numbering for it. It would just be part of the regiment's not there. You know, part of it's doing something else. So that's kind of fucked up. Another thing that I've run across since we're doing this is we have a ridiculous number of replacement commanders. And let's take a look. All of the French wing commanders not with the Allies, but all of the French wing commanders are 0 rated, and all of their replacements are 0 rated. We've got an excess of these, though. You know, like I've got this particular wing has 4 replacement commanders. Now, you might say, well, you know, they want to give you all the leaders so that if you lose certain leaders, you can promote others, etc. As the rules are, you actually can't lose 0-point leaders. They will not die because you can't commit them to a brigade, and the only way that units die is by being committed to a brigade. So maybe there was some more reason given, but given that like they actually don't give you enough replacement counters for the Neerwinden game, that's kind of troubling. You also do not have a replacement for the army commander here. Now, well, actually, you don't have a separate army commander. You have Tallard, who's the wing commander. He is also the army commander. You can't break him apart, so I guess he's stuck with his particular wing. Okay, it makes no difference if he's going to be a 0 anyway. It really doesn't make a difference. So the only army commander in the game is Marlborough. Although, you know, you're essentially playing as the army commander in a lot of ways, at least with the things that you're issuing over here. At least with transferring wings, maybe not so much transferring troops around. I'll come back if I start finding more stuff, but yeah, I'm definitely running into some problems. The wings are also a little weird, but like, the divisions are always a little they were a little fucked up in Neerwinden. Here, I feel like Neerwinden maybe applied better to the ideas that I was having played that game, in terms of breaking the wings up, you know, making the wing designations switch. I don't know how big a deal it is, though. I still think frontage is kind of the important thing. And you've got frontage already spelled out on these. Part of it is understood. This brigade includes 2 regiments. One is this Shalansk, and another is this Wert-Ort, that have multiple pieces. Well, I found other pieces of Wert-Ort, or Wert-Ers. Wert-Els? Yeah, that's what it is. Wert-Els? Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Let me see. Yeah, over here. So they're on the field. They're just grouped into different brigades. And I'm assuming the units here that are from something else, like this is part of something else, which is Yisk. Yisk? I don't know if that's an I or a J. I can't really read. It's not the other unit of this, but I'm assuming I will find more Dutch. Although I'm not sure. I seem to be out of Dutch, although I see one under there or something. Dane's not Dutch. These are the Dutch, the orange. Interesting facet. Remember I had the artillery. I had an issue with artillery where there wasn't enough artillery in the other bags. I don't know how I decided where my artillery, which bag they went into. They all look the same, right? Except for the nationality of them. But I think they were kind of positioned in the counter sheet next to units that were in the same command. It was kind of a bitch to sort which battle units went to. There's no marking on the counters, so what you have to do is compare. In the end, you had to compare the unit name on here. But location-wise, some of the artillery were placed near one, some near the other. I had, I believe, precisely as many French artillery as I needed for the Neerwinden game, and I had to pull one out of that bag to put into this. There are not enough French artillery pieces to cover both games, but there are more than you need for any one game. So I don't know what's up with that, but in terms of sorting or whatever, you may want to put all your artillery in with your markers, or maybe not, I don't know, because, you know, they are essentially indistinguishable. I'll show you them like the French, say French R7. That's just what they say, you know, they're not named, they're not anything like that. For the Allies, they tend to be more nationally aligned. So I have a couple of artillery here. I don't know what, I guess Imperial? That would not have worked in the Near-Winden game at all. So far I haven't found where they go. Nor do I know if I had to dig out some additional English. It's okay that there's a couple extra pieces, but it would be kind of nice to give us a little bit of information just about, you know, hey, you got a couple extra artillery in case that's what you luckily drop instead of some important cav unit that is, you know, unique, right? Yeah, okay. So to hit something else up on setup, I've had issues. French artillery. Oh yeah, they have special rules involving them. Setup instructions are listed here. There are two lines, one blue and one purple, indicating the forward line that any French unit may occupy. The blue line is the historical line, and the purple is the more aggressive French. So the blue line runs here, and the French have to set up behind that if you play the historical, less aggressive deployment. The more aggressive deployment pushes them out to here where they cover the river. You know what there isn't? There is not any instructions on where the English are or where the Allied forces are supposed to set up. I figure at least behind the current setup. I'm going with the river line here. And then, I don't know, maybe up to here, but maybe down to here. I don't know. You know, I haven't decided yet. It doesn't make too much difference here because this is going to be an all-cav wing, which I don't know how that's going to get through this infantry line. That seems pretty hopeless. And then the other one, well, this one I've got infantry in the line. So for whatever you look at. But yeah, it's kind of weird because trying to see if there's, I thought there was a French. Yeah, the French have an infantry. Oh no, this is cav. Yeah, so like the battle is divided up into wings of, not everywhere. The French are divided up into what's primarily an infantry wing. You can throw some cav into it, which I've done, for good or ill. Then a cav wing here, all cav, right? Everything that's in that wing is cav. And then a big, a little slice of infantry wing here. Yeah, look at the shapes of these things. I mean, you know, it's presupposing what advances are going to be like. Of course, the French are not advancing this time, and that may be why I'm seeing things a little differently. But, you know, the English here, or the Allied forces, if they do break through here with their all-cav against an infantry line wing, which sounds impossible to me, they'll be cut on this. They can only occupy 2 hexes of width for quite a bit of it. That's like, that does some nice things. It gives you a lot of flexibility in these other wings, but it basically says you can't do anything here. You have like a wing, and it's okay. Like I said, it's cav facing infantry. It's not going to break through this defensive line. Then here you have kind of a mixed wing with infantry in the front and cav in reserve, which all makes sense to me. But then we hit another mixed wing here with infantry and cav. And again, both sides have that. But oddly, there's like this cav versus cav fight channeled here. So it goes like mainly infantry cav, I guess for both sides, and then just like here, weird infantry versus cav, and elsewhere 2 mixed wings. Yeah. I don't know. And I would say there's something sort of odd, because a lot of the decisions that the overall commander makes in these kind of battles were how to deploy their forces. You know, what order they reach the battle in. And that's all pre-programmed in this one. In the Nearwinden, you had kind of an argument of, well, we're not absolutely sure where and when everything was. And I don't mind, like, here's the historical setup, but I kind of feel like, and obviously you can do this as an option, but there's no indication of that. To make a more competitive experience, I would say that it would make sense to allow players to set up their battlefield, their order of battle, essentially. They have the same troops as they would historically, but being able to decide which wing, which sectors of the map you want, which units to be on, where you want your focus to be and everything. I feel like that could be pretty damn important and could give an interesting opportunity for more strategy than the game kind of sort of allows, But I sure the hell wouldn't want to do that the first time I play. Incongruity in terms of the counter mix and what it gives you. There's a concept of units with depth. We covered this in the rules. It comes into play here. As do units with an underlying strength. I don't remember if there were any in Nearwinden. If there were, and I kind of vaguely think there might have been, those units get a bonus in terms of, like, they have greater size, so they're harder to overlap. So their flanks can get an advantage on the combat table. I kind of forgot to check that after, like, the first turn or whatever. It's very hard to see. You don't see it in these units, even though they have a huge depth. But like this unit has an underlying strength. These units, even the larger ones like this one, do not have the underlying strength, which is kind of weird because it's supposed to be that they're deployed to a longer front, is essentially what it comes down to. So they can't be outflanked in quite the same way. But it's not on here, I believe. So, like, it's like there's one little rule, and I think I just, like, wasn't seeing those lines. It would only be on allied units. Looking through these, they're pretty rare, but I vaguely seem to remember seeing some in the other game. Anyway, but beyond that, there's this concept of depth. There's these markers which show 1 or 2 depth, and basically they're an extra hit point that the unit has after its first fire. After it gets flipped over, it then can take its first hit, or perhaps first 2 hits, on its depth markers. Okay. And those are expressed here. It's an optional rule. It gives an advantage to the allies. The allies have a lot of advantages in this battle. Well, there are precisely enough red depth markers to cover all the units. I don't believe that there are any Dutch units that require a depth marker. I looked through this, and, like, the Danes need them and the English need them. If you look through here, I don't see any Dutch there. There's a Württemberg unit that needs them. One Württemberg unit. There are exactly as many red depth markers as you need to cover all the allied units. And then there's 2 that look like they're Dutch. And I don't know. I'm left with the question of, is there a little Dutch unit, or maybe a Prussian unit, which is orange as well, that should have had a depth marker but doesn't have it on the sheet? Or did they just for some reason decide to print a couple of extra depth markers for the Dutch color for no apparent reason whatsoever? So a hint that there may be some errata. It's not going to be a big effect. Again, it's an optional rule to give the Allied forces a bigger advantage than they already have. Some more staying power with their units. That doesn't give them more combat power. It just gives them more, you know, they have more files behind that they can throw into play. But I wanted to bring that up since, you know, all of this, if I was the kind of person who like, oh, hi, little squirrel. It must be baby squirrel season. If I was the kind of person who believed in editing my videos and everything, got there. Whoop. I would, you know, record the introduction part, put that in front of this and everything. I'm too fucking lazy to do that. It actually opens up some problems because I want to get into some of the play on this too. So like I'd have to store bits of my video on the computer and then remember to do that all when I normally just load everything onto the computer at once and then stick it together because my camera has enough space to hold these big videos. But yeah, instead of that, you're getting, you know, what's kind of this sporadic opening instead of like, here we are at Blenheim and here's the story and, you know, look at the setup's done and everything. And then I would flash back to, hey, you know, I had some issues with setup and all kind of stuff like that. Professional people do that kind of stuff, you know, professional YouTuber type people. But I ain't that. Okay, so now when I did the Neerwinden, the first scenario, another little one of those things, they showed an example of the command display. That's not terribly helpful. And they don't show any example on the map. The setup for both armies was well defined in that game. It is not in this one, unfortunately. Maybe again that's something that was left behind. But this is what I've chosen to go with the Allied army showing up everywhere behind the river. Now, if the French had the more aggressive setup, they could be set up right along the river line here, and there wouldn't be these causeways. And I don't know how good that is because they'd be pushing cav along the river. We'll talk about that in a bit. But my feeling is that if the causeways are there, I must have my troops close enough. Maybe I'm a hex back, maybe I'm a hex too far forward from what I should be. Obviously, the closest I should be able to be is right along the line here. That feels wrong. You know, I should have to walk a little bit of the way and undergo some artillery fire if the French have any artillery at the front, which they do. Why do I have the French artillery in the front line? It's a good question. I have only done that where the cav, I've only done that here. I don't particularly want that there. That's part of this wing, so I'll put it there. Oh yeah, I do, because I was going to advance to there. Okay. Elsewhere, it looks like I've got my guns behind. All right, we're good. So, this is Blenheim. If you remember in my campaign of Marlborough game, there was a situation where, you know, when the Bavarians come into the play, they pose a significant risk to the imperial situation, where they might be threatening Austria itself. And the answer to that is to divert a big part of your army. And the biggie here is that Marlborough himself is in command. He managed to march down, join Prince Eugen, and lead a combined force against the Franco-Bavarian army that was potentially threatening to take, to attack for Vienna, even possibly. And there was nothing else in the way. So he was able to get this big combined army in play. And the French didn't expect that there would be that big an army. And this was kind of a masterstroke. It required a very fast march, one that, by the rates of the time, which are not that impressive, compared to the Romans or whatever, and they don't hold up. But it was a very fast march for the time, and the French didn't think there could possibly be that many troops hitting them here. And they've thrown themselves back into a defensive position, set fire to a couple of places on the board. Now this is kind of interesting. They're marked on the map with little flames. It's kind of hard to see though, so I put the fire markers there. But these fire markers are also the artillery limbered markers. And unlike the last scenario, I'm actually starting with some artillery limbered. That may have to do with me making up what the setup is like. Like I said, I've decided, hey, I guess I have to be behind the river. And if I'm behind this river, is it here or here? Well, let's push them back as far as possible. Give the battle more time to develop on that flank or whatever. I don't know. And although things feel awfully crowded, like I would be a lot happier with the space if I was here. I wouldn't be stuck in the woods or whatever. But if this is ahistorical, it's ahistorical. And the Allied armies had a harder time getting forward. But even if the Allies were up here, they would still want their artillery limbered. Now, what about these guns? The Brits have some guns in the front here. I felt that having them unlimbered and ready to fire could help soften the cav line or whatever the defenses are here. And it makes sense to have them positioned there already unlimbered. I got to swap batteries. All well and good. But these guys are not going to do any good. If you take a look at the artillery fire table, whatever the hell it is, there's March. Ah, they got instructions here. Whoa. I wonder if there's anything important here. Anything that's not in the rules. I don't think so. Okay. And the things that I don't remember that are on here, there are other things that I have to check whenever I check those. So that's fine. Okay, yeah. So if I had artillery back here, well, the artillery maximum range is 7 hexes. Obviously, that's more than 7. Even if they were here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'd be at maximal range. I wouldn't want my guns to be unlimbered back behind this river. Now, of course, if I'm within 2 hexes of, the enemy setup, or 3 hexes or whatever, like things were in Neerwinden, and maybe that's what's intended. Maybe what it is this flexible French setup line. You're supposed to set up X number of hexes behind whatever the actual French setup is. So here, this would be like 3 hexes behind. Well, then I could be, over here, or more or less behind this stream here. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the situation here. So this is going to start at 12:21 p.m. I'll be here. Okay. And the game goes until 6:40 p.m. If it happens to last that long. Okay. Yeah. And if it does happen to last that long, the French win the game by holding the ground for long enough. Victory in this is routing any wing. That could include this little sliver here right? Or whatever. Any wing routing completely is a complete victory. The flanks aren't particularly interesting. And in a way it makes sense, right? I'm anchored here with the Danube, I'm anchored here in the woods. Marching through the woods to fight doesn't seem like an effective thing to do. We'll see. Maybe I'll try it. All right. We talked about the setup. All brigades start under march order, already set there. The Allies have the top, and the French have the bottom edge as their retreat area. Some units have battalion guns. What do battalion guns do? I don't remember. I believe the way they work is they have a one-time fire where they flip over. That's not a battalion gun. Let's find a battalion gun. Shit. Now I'm having trouble. Here's one. Where they have a one-time fire and just cause a hit. And I think they can only go one hex in front of them. I'll have to look that up. Or I could look here. Ha ha ha. Battalion and regiment guns, 7 and 18. Battalion guns. Each counter is stacked with and moves at no cost with the infantry unit. It has an effective range of 1 hex. If the infantry unit attacks or is attacked from the front, the guns may automatically be played prior, I guess with no die roll, prior to the resolution of the attack by flipping the counter. Basically, it's an artillery impact for the rest of the turn after that happens. But the enemy has to kind of close with you for those guns to fire. And again, it's just a one-shot. It's like first fire. So, whatever. I don't expect they'll have a hell of a lot of impact, but they do affect they affect the strength of the enemy unit when it attacks you, and they sit around for movement if that happens to have any effect. And they list the units that have them. They're aligned with the things. The Nebel. That's this stream here, and then I don't know which branch is actually the Nebel. From the Danube to the fourth fork south of Schweinenbach. Here. It's the dark side of it. And you'll notice, we actually have things that fit the terrain that's listed in the game. So we have Major River. Okay, that's not on the board. But you know what? It's right on the edge of the thing, and I'm just assuming, given what the Danube is like, you ain't crossing it. But you're especially not crossing it because there's nothing to cross it to. But again, you're not going to be able to retreat across the Danube or anything like that. It's just impassable, I'm assuming. You have a marshy stream, which is this, and that's what we're talking about right here. And then we have small stream. We also have bridge, which is not defined here. I don't know that it has any effect whatsoever. I'm assuming not. It's just there for visual purposes. We have chateaus. I think these are actually windmills, according to something else, but anyway. And then we have the villages. Okay. But let's go back to the Nebel. It was fairly marshy and could present difficulty to large bodies of troops. Marlborough had his dragoons carry forward fascines and make 5 causeways in the Unterglau area, which is where you see these. Is it the only place you see them? Yeah, so you don't have them here, right? So we got to make a mess there. The Allied player places 5 causeway maps during the setup in the Unterglau wing. From the Schweinenbach fork to the Danube, shown on the map as a marshy stream, any unit crossing the Nebel without crossing it across a causeway must start its movement adjacent to the stream and expend all its movement to cross. And you'll see that here. Now, here's the thing. We don't know if we have hasty or normal breastworks back in Neerwinden. We don't have both. We have one kind of breastworks in the game in Neerwinden, and it all looks the same. And you have no kind in this. So again, yeah, they're planning on other games in the series. I understand wanting to get the chart right and everything. The map key should have matched it though. Okay, anyway, if you're crossing not at a causeway, you must start your movement adjacent and expend all your movement to cross. Therefore, if you're under any artillery impact, you're not allowed to cross. At a causeway, however, you can cross by expending 2 movement points for infantry and 3 for cav. French didn't oppose the crossing of the Nebel, so the impact is pretty minimal. Players who are looking to start the battle quickly may want to just make this all optional. If you're playing a more active French strategy, however, the causeways are recommended. Yeah, but if you're playing the forward deployment, you're going to have a harder time convincing me that they were able to get up there. I don't know. This is all cav. What's it going to do? It can't charge across, and the dragoons would have been protected from it. Yeah. Burning villages and mills. The French set fire to Unterglau and the mills along the Nebel to prevent their use by the advancing Allies. The affected hexes have a fire icon on the map. No units may enter these hexes during the game. Historically, the fires didn't really do anything, and were a smoke screen that they could like deploy behind. Like I said, they're printed on the map. I'm using fire counters to help remind me you can't enter those areas. The fire counters are kind of useless, except that the map printings are a little bit hard to see. If I need to limber more artillery, I will simply pluck those off and ignore them. I don't think they're going to have any fucking effect, but it's hard to tell. You know, they kind of make a block in the path of advance for support units and stuff like that. French artillery. French artillery did a prolonged bombardment from 7:30 a.m. until the Allies were in place at 12:30 p.m. Now this is where I'm really iffy, where I feel like maybe this should be further up. It's not going to make a hell of a lot of difference, but it is going to mean that this wing develops more slow. Well, these 2 wings develop more slowly than if I was deployed up here. I don't know. Again, I got no rules on where the Allies are supposed to deploy. I'm pretty sure it has to be somewhere behind the chosen French setup line. How far behind is just a big question, and I've chosen to make the stream the line. But this feels too crowded. Maybe I'll push them forward. I don't know. I really don't know. Anyway. I mean, they're going to move up there anyway. It's going to be slow because they have to cross the stream 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and then cut down. Anyway, French artillery did a prolonged bombardment, and this may have caused some issues to Prince Eugene's progress, which is going to be this stack here, right? Yeah, we got Eugen in this area, so he's holding the right flank of the Allied force. Well, they aren't going to reach. Yeah, we're going to push those units forward because the artillery wouldn't be able to do shit out here. So, like, let's say I'm firing these guns. Let's say it was right at the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It means that I'd have, you know, some capability to interdict here. This gun, if it was, this gun could be placed up. It could interdict 1, 2, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It could actually interdict through there. So I think I'm supposed to be. I'm gonna move my line up to here, and that'll give me a lot more space. Okay, we'll get back to that in a moment. They lay down to limit. Okay, anyway, they laid down to limit the effect of the bombardment and were helped by the damp ground around the Nebel, absorbing many shots. The result was the French artillery pretty much just expended all their ammunition by the time the Allies launched their attack. If a French battery fires and rolls a 0 or a 1, those are bad rolls on the chart, unlike on the attack chart for infantry and cavalry where you really want a low roll. Then that artillery piece is just removed from play because it's out of ammo. Then we talked about the depth markers. The map itself. Astute players will notice that the French left Allied right bends strongly to the south between Oberglau and Lutzingen. Yeah, I mean, look at this, right? And we're going to conform more to that as we move forward and get a little bit more space. So what? While historically the line was relatively straight along an east-west axis. Okay. So they're saying this shifts. I don't know what they're talking about here. Like, let's keep going. While historically the line was relatively straight along an east-west, we've also moved the village of Lutzigen somewhat further south than its actual position. I'm kind of like, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, the map is one of the few things you can kind of really know about these battlefields, right? This exaggerated southward bend was created to allow the French line to align more effectively with the hex grid and prevent a stair-step effect, which bedevils many tactical war games. So I think this is supposed to be a little further up. That would create a different kind of slope. I don't know. Would it create more frontage? Again, I don't know. But the point is, in this system, you don't tend to leave your defensive line. You're not seeing the kind of maneuver you'll see in Napoleonic or later, right? So it may be pretty important to make sure that the hex grid doesn't end up unsmooth. To me, that's a flaw. Like in the design, but in a sense of like, yeah, what do? You know, you're not going to use hexes. What are you going to use? Areas or something like that would work, obviously, but that's a totally different kind of design of game. And it may just be, if you think about, you know, how static the combat was at Neerwinden and whatnot, maybe a lot of problems could be gotten rid of by not using a hex grid. I don't know. You know, because a lot of it had to do with conforming to the wing boundaries. But on the other hand, I really have not been terribly pleased with what I've seen of tactical games using area. There's, I don't remember what the name of it was, but it might be the Eagles of Empire or whatever. There's a Napoleonic series that I gave a couple of shots to. Did Eylau, did Borodino, I think. And I may have others of that game series. Some people really said, oh, it just captures the feel so much better. I felt like I was really missing something, and maybe I would feel the same. And again, you know, you don't really have the opportunity to maneuver all your little regiments, as it were, when you're dealing, you know, if you're dealing with that kind of situation. But on the other hand, it might actually provide a better representation for such static fighting as shows up here. Not sure. It's just a thought to have in mind, because I'm uncomfortable with the idea that, like, yeah, we had to distort reality because hex grid. I'm like, oh boy. And I totally see it. Because if this line is not an actual straight line, and that's what the battle would be, right? It would be an actual straight line. It would just be running like this instead, right? Not on the hex grid. Obviously, you could also play with a more minis type system where you're measuring distances and such not, and you don't have to worry about the regulation of the hex grid. But yeah, I will try to pretend I'm not aware of that, because it does really bug the shit out of me. But yeah, I mean, we've got some situations that I don't understand in this game, in this particular scenario. For example, the huge number of replacement leaders. Once you get down to a 0 leader. Oh, we also have the U-wing, which is the main wing that the other Churchill is is the wing commander. I've got Marlboro with him because I see that as the most important wing. That's got this Orkney guy who's pretty good. Do we have an ordering of the replacements? I think we do. No, we have a list of the wing commanders, but we don't have... Oh, here are the replacement leaders. Yeah, there's no AC. Okay, so at U, it goes von Bülow. Oh, you've got to get rid of everybody. So von Bülow, then... Because the Allies can actually lose leaders, and it's kind of cool, because if they do, they have replacements who are decent. So I may actually want to assign wing commanders to actual units. Not in the hopes of getting them killed, but because I then have a bonus in the combat. So yeah, von Bülow would be the first, then Hamspeck, then Oosterfries, and Orkney. Okay, what's Horn and Inglesby up to? Okay, so this is interesting. Now here at Wylam Farm, which is W, we have Wertenberg in charge, but we don't have W's there. So that's why there's so many here. These are misprinted. These should have W's on them instead of U's. Not a big deal, but it is something. So here we have Horn, von Bülow from over there, Hamspeck, Oosterfries, and Orkney again. So Inglesby doesn't get a command ever. I have the feeling they did a cut and paste error. I'm going to put Inglesby in behind Horn and just say that that's simple. Like there's just a simple problem here. Wait, Horn's on both. Whoa, 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 whoa. Horn, von Bülow, Hamspeck, Oosterfries. Oh, fuck. I got no idea, man. Yeah, I got no idea where Inglesby is supposed to be. Is he supposed to be on the board? No. Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking that... So Orkney is your last ranking in Unterglau. I think we have this whole series of commanders to say, once you get down to Orkney, then you have an excellent leader. So you want to kill off Churchill, etc. I think Inglesby is just the next leader down on this next one, but I'm not sure, because there are no zeros in either of those wings then, which is somewhat problematic. Now if we look here, Marlborough as the overall commander can be replaced by Prince Eugen. There is no army command counter for Prince Eugen. Let's keep looking. So then Cutts gets replaced by Lumley. All right, so this is easy. We have zeros here. Lumley and Scholten are both zeros. And then at the Lutzen Gap, this is kind of interesting. When Eugen comes out, we replace him by Maximilian, Württemberg Tech, and De La Tour, who are all zeros. There is no reason for there to be 3 zeros. Now, if we look at the French commanders, they have big stacks. Every single French commander is a 0 in this game. I think. Yeah. The entire French command is just shit. And we have layer upon layer of these replacement leaders. And anywhere where there's a 0 in a wing command, he cannot die. And so they wasted a bunch of counters, as far as I'm concerned. I understand the desire to put these extra leaders in. Maybe there was some purpose to it. But you cannot assign a 0 rank leader to a place where he could get injured. And that's that. All right, let me fix those. I'll come back and show you what the world looks like afterwards. All my batteries are charging, and I play this game of where can I get that thing? down there to charge. Right now it's charging there. I didn't even know I had a socket there. It reminds me of how fucked up things are. Like, building codes are, and it's great for me because, you know, I need lots of power outlets, but building codes are so weird. It's like every 6 feet you have to have a socket or something like that. And so I have one over there by the computer. There's one here. There's one over here. There's one over here. There's one over there. But if this counts as living space, there's a problem, which is there isn't one there, and there isn't one along there, and there isn't one along there. There is one back there. I don't know if they fudge things, or maybe the rules are different here in Oregon than they are in New York State. But in New York State, you would have had to put, you couldn't get away with like, oh, I've got 2 of them on one post, so that counts for over there. And you couldn't get away with that one being there and one right next to it being sufficient to cover the railing over there. It was really, really strict. When we were building, well, when my folks were building the barn that they put up, and they had loft spaces, mainly one loft, and basically anything that got called living space, you wouldn't have to put it in closets. Closets are fine. There is probably something hidden behind there. I don't recall, but I'm not positive. Anyway, so this is what we have. Line up here. Let me talk about what the different formations are in terms of placement. So for the French, we have some dragoons here that I've put in mounted form because I feel like they're covering the flank. Mounted seems right. I'm not so sure about that, but I'll tell you this much. These guys have a strength of 3. Their dismounted version has a strength of 2. I felt like 3-point cavalry is worth more than 2-point infantry. That was the deciding factor, was the strength points. I don't know, because I'm going to be facing infantry there. Everything backing this up is infantry. So that's this wing. And I've got a couple of artillery pieces. I learned my lesson. I put them behind the line. Here, the French have a cav wing, really. And this is one of the weird ones, right? No, this is the weird one because it cuts up this way, but it's like, look, you know, the French aren't expected to come forward, so fine, there's only a little bit of space here. And the little bit of space that's covered works just peachy. Okay, and this is an infantry wing facing an infantry wing at the town of Lutzingen. Here, it's a cav wing facing a cav wing, and that's running, These depth markers make stacks kind of big, as do the brigade guns. Cav wing facing over this region here. We get here to Oberplay or Oberglau, and we have an infantry wing, again with some artillery to back it up, facing a cav wing. No way the cav's going to dislodge infantry from a town. So I think this is just there to screen and prevent the French from being able to march out and, you know, do something horrendous. But basically this becomes an ignored wing. Where did they win? Where did they win? Hochstadt Plain. That's going to be H, which is nowhere. Where's Hochstadt Plain? Fuck. I swear there was an H. There's an H here. Oh, this is fucked up. Ah, okay. So Hochstadt Plain is the center, but it's not called that. So the names of the wings are related by how each side sees them. So here, Blenheim strong point is Blenheim. Whereas this is Blenheim approach, getting towards Blenheim. Likewise down here, it's Lützingen strong point, Lützingen approach. So Unterglau and Hochstadt Plain are opposing, are the same wing. And this is kind of interesting because it almost feels like you could define different wings for different situations. I, again, am going to probably fuck around with the wing boundaries and not make them as rigid as they are in the rules. And where I want to switch them, I'll bring up a little clip tie or something and just mark where the wing boundaries change as needed. The other change that I had in mind had to do with the idea of individual facing within a hex. This would be pretty... The developer asked me to write something up and maybe get it into C3I, but you know, we're talking about like a couple of lines, right? The first one is you can redefine your wings as you kind of need to, you know, right? The second one is if I'm in, that doesn't work very well because it's not infantry, but let's pretend this is infantry because it's in a good location. If I'm in a hex like this, this unit is, say, in the front, and the other unit is going to be covering the line at kind of a tilt. And if you do that, you can actually construct lines that wouldn't cause the problem and wouldn't have required the map deformation. The question is, do I want to cope with that? Because it's a fiddly, annoying thing to do. To have so you already have this individual facing concept within the village itself, but this other thing would allow you to have individual facing everywhere, where basically if you have two units in a stack, you're allowed to declare that you're covering one line with the other unit. And what it means is the units aren't exactly stacked. There's like 3 positions any infantry stack could be in. One is this, where you've got a unit in the front and a unit in the back. And if you get attacked from the rear, it's the unit in the back that gets hit. They're still getting hit in the rear. Another would be this, where the unit in the front is covering these front 2 hexes, and the other unit is covering these 2 hexes. It's refusing the flank, and this unit would be anchored by, let's see, it would be this hex instead of this hex. So you could create a more fluid line that way. And by the way, you know, if developer, designers, whatever, want to take these ideas and try to, you know, make a couple of paragraphs as a optional rule, that's fine. I just don't want to, I don't know how to go about submitting things, and I don't know how to write readable and understandable rules either. But I think I've kind of explained, you know, how that would work. That would have actually allowed you to avoid the distortion of the terrain, but it's at great cost. I feel like the idea of just using little markers to move the wing boundaries is not a big deal. The other things that I added were just, you know, on the fly type things to make up shit to make a withdrawal able to be played out. There's no reason to do that except that I like to see withdrawals and routes, and I like to see how the system incorporates them. And I was happy with how Neerwinden did it. It felt like I had to do very, very little to fix what I was doing. In some cases, maybe make up some modifiers, and in other cases, just make up a rule where, you know, a unit could basically be withdrawing into the support line without any kind of die rolls or anything like that. What do we got here? We got a big line of cav for the French versus a mixed force infantry in the front, cav in the back. This can't hold. That infantry can just push that away. And there's no infantry. Oh no, there is infantry back here to back it up. But that's going to be a really interesting fight in the sense that we saw nothing like that in Neerwinden, where infantry is trying to push cav out of the way that's covering first. And it's actually 2 lines of cav and then a line of infantry in the reserve, which feels really, really weird to me. Like, it makes a lot more sense to me to hold a line of infantry in the front the way that the Allied forces had at Neerwinden, and then have cav behind to fling in, repulse the enemy attack, and then if if things are set up correctly, you would also have an infantry in the rear line to come forward. So it's going to be really, really intriguing to see how that works out. And then the final, whereas the Allies have infantry leading the attack and cav behind it, which again, that sets up something very specific. The infantry is going to drive the defending cav off, but if it starts falling apart and faltering, there's cav to back it up. I don't know if I would, like, if I was facing a line of cav to begin with, I might throw cav up there to begin with. But getting across the river with cav, not so easy, so maybe this is going to make sense. Then we have Blenheim, which is, again, one of 3 villages that the French actually, like, if I recall correctly from this one, and I think that this was in the historical notes for this, I think this was one of those battles where the French threw way too many troops into at least one of these villages, possibly this one, in trying to defend the line, and they actually got kind of fucked up by it. Here we have an interesting mix. A line of infantry, some dragoons, and then another line of infantry in the swamp. That's because the cav isn't going to work well in the swamp, so I figured, well, it's not going to work well in the village, it's not going to work well in the swamp, I got to put it there. Because I'm actually limited to which units were deployed historically in the front. So that's that. Now, this unit is Fontainebleau, which is this. That's the one unit that I had an option on. This Hauteville, I had to deploy as cav. I had no option in the matter. I would have probably deployed it as infantry. Again, I think infantry is just more powerful for everything in this period. I mean, there's certain stuff you want to use cav for. I'm not impressed with the capability of cav in terms of holding ground. It doesn't seem like something cav is meant for. And in terms of attacking infantry, formed infantry units, it's not going to do all that well here. Remember, you got your socket bayonets, so everybody's a pikeman here. And the Allies have infantry, another line of infantry, some cav back here too. Whoa, oh no, this is a different, so this is infantry, and all this is, of course, infantry. I've got a cav in the support line, that, whatever, and then cav in the reserve to bring up an additional possible attack. And that battery is no longer charging, which worries me, because it's not done. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to load this up as the setup video. That'll make me feel a little less bad. It's long enough,